The sky over Varela burned with streaks of fire as human and alien ships clashed above the planet. Explosions lit the horizon, shaking the ground under Kale's boots. He sprinted through the rubble of the city, his combat armor dented and scorched, carrying his plasma rifle tight in his grip. Somewhere ahead, the evacuation zone still held survivors. He could hear their cries between the distant thud of orbital strikes. He had no time to think about how many were already gone. He only had time to act. Smoke swirled through the broken streets, and Kale's visor kept flashing warnings of structural collapse. As he turned a corner, his eyes caught movement in the shadows. A small figure crouched behind a pile of shattered stone. He aimed his rifle but froze when he saw her. She was young, barely past a child by human standards, with silver hair that gleamed even in the dim light and eyes that glowed faintly blue. Her thin hands trembled as she tried to lift a piece of debris from a crushed alien soldier. The soldier's armor bore the mark of the Varelan Guard, an enemy force that had sworn to destroy humanity. Yet the girl's voice cracked with desperation as she called for help. Kale's training screamed for him to keep moving. His orders were clear: save human civilians and avoid engagement with enemy forces. But this was not a soldier aiming a weapon at him. This was a terrified child trying to save someone she cared about. His boots crunched over debris as he stepped forward, lowering his rifle. The girl flinched but did not run. Her eyes met his, pleading without words. In that instant, Kale knew he would break protocol. He grabbed the debris and heaved it aside, freeing the alien beneath. The injured alien gasped for air, his breathing labored. Kale could see at once that the soldier would not live long. The girl knelt beside the dying man, holding his hand and whispering in a language Kale didn't understand. The soldier's gaze shifted to Kale, filled with suspicion and confusion. But there was no strength left in his body to fight. With one final breath, the soldier's eyes closed. The girl's shoulders shook, yet she did not cry. Instead, she looked back up at Kale with a stubborn fire in her eyes, as if daring him to walk away now. An explosion ripped through a nearby building, forcing Kale to grab the girl and pull her toward cover. She stumbled against him, her small frame shaking from the shockwave. "We have to move," he said firmly. She hesitated, glancing once more at the fallen alien, before finally nodding. Kale guided her through the wreckage, keeping his rifle ready as enemy drones zipped overhead. Each step toward the evac point felt like a fight against time. He didn't know why he was risking so much for her, but his gut told him she mattered. More than he could explain. When they finally reached the outskirts of the city, Kale waved down a human dropship. The pilot looked confused at the sight of the alien girl, but Kale didn't give him a choice. "She's coming with us," he said sharply. The girl clung to his arm, silent but unyielding. As the dropship lifted off, the war still raged below, but Kale's mind was already turning over questions. Who was she? Why had she been left behind? And why, despite everything, did he feel like this meeting would change his life forever? The dropship cut through the clouds, carrying Kale and the alien girl far from the burning city. Inside the cramped cabin, soldiers sat in silence, their armor scratched and stained with ash. Some stared at the girl with open suspicion, hands never far from their weapons. Kale kept her close, one arm braced protectively across her small shoulders. She didn't speak, her glowing blue eyes fixed on the floor. Every vibration of the ship made her flinch slightly, but she never looked afraid of Kale himself. The moment they landed at the human forward base, questions began. Officers demanded to know why Kale had brought an enemy civilian. Medical personnel tried to pull her away for scanning, but she clung to him with surprising strength. Her fingers gripped his arm like steel, and when he looked down, he saw something strange in her expression. She wasn't just scared. She was studying everything around her, every soldier, every piece of equipment. as if memorizing it all. Kale had a sinking feeling this was not an ordinary refugee in the command tent. Colonel Vance listened to Kale's account with an unreadable face. When Kale finished, Vance's gaze shifted to the girl, who now stood at attention despite her. "Youth, you understand what you've done?" Vance said quietly. "That's a member of the enemy species. Keeping her here puts the entire base at risk." Kale didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked for permission to take personal responsibility for her safety. Vance looked like he wanted to refuse, but after a tense moment, he gave a short nod. "She's your problem now, soldier," he said. Days passed, and the girl whose name Kale learned was Aris slowly adapted to life in the human camp. She rarely spoke, and when she did, it was in short, clipped words. But she followed Kale everywhere, watching him train, eat, and repair his armor. Other soldiers began to make comments, some mocking, some suspicious. Kale ignored them. He noticed that Aris moved with a precision far beyond her years, her balance and reflexes sharper than most adults. She wasn't just surviving here. She was learning how humans fought. One evening, Kale found her near the firing range, holding a disassembled human rifle. No one had shown her how to take it apart, yet she handled the pieces with practiced care. "Where did you learn this?" Kale asked. Aris looked up, her silver hair catching the last light of sunset. "Watched," she replied simply. Then she reassembled the weapon faster than most recruits could manage. Kale felt a chill. She was growing stronger and faster every day. If she ever turned against them, she could be dangerous. Yet when she handed him the rifle, her eyes held something almost like pride. The war raged on beyond the base walls. Kale received orders to join a high-risk mission deep into enemy territory. He tried to leave Aris under guard, but she resisted, clinging to him again. "You will die," she said flatly, as if it were a simple fact. "Not if I'm careful," he replied. "Stay here where it's safe." She shook her head, her small frame rigid. "I am safer with you," she insisted. Against his better judgment, Kale began to realize he believed her. She had a strange way of reading danger before it happened. In battle that could save lives. 2 nights before the mission, Kale found Aris outside, staring at the distant glow of enemy artillery. Her voice was quiet when she spoke. "You think I am a child, but my people grow fast. I will be older soon. Stronger. You told me once to come back when I am older. I will." Kale frowned, remembering those words from the day they met. At the time, he had said it to push her toward safety, not as a promise. Now hearing it again, he wasn't sure what it meant to her. The determination in her eyes made him uneasy, but also strangely certain she meant every word. The morning of the mission arrived cold and gray. Kale stood in the armory, checking his weapons and gear. Outside, soldiers prepared their transports, engines rumbling in the mist. Aris appeared in the doorway without a sound, already wearing a fitted vest and carrying a small pack. Kale sighed, knowing there was no way to keep her behind now. "Stay close to me at all times," he said. She only nodded, her expression calm and steady. The truth was, he felt safer with her nearby. Though he would never admit it out loud, the journey through enemy territory was tense. The forest stretched in every direction, thick with fog and shadows. Every few minutes, Kale saw Aris glance toward something unseen, moments before a sound or movement confirmed a threat. Twice, she warned the squad to take cover, and both times, enemy patrols passed without spotting them. Even the most skeptical soldiers began to look at her with a mix of respect and caution. She moved like she belonged in the wilderness, and yet her eyes always returned to Kale. As if he were the only one she truly followed, they reached the edge of a ruined city by nightfall. The mission was to retrieve critical intel from an abandoned communications tower. The streets were littered with debris and broken walls, and the air smelled of burned metal. Kale led the team forward, his visor scanning for movement. Aris stayed just behind him, silent but alert. When they reached the base of the tower, she tugged on his arm, pointing to a shadow on the roof. A sniper lay in wait, almost invisible to the human eye. Kale signaled the others, and a quick shot took the enemy down before he could fire. Inside the tower, the squad split into pairs to search for the data core. Kale and Aris moved through the dark corridors, their footsteps echoing faintly. At one point, Aris froze, tilting her head toward a sealed door. Without speaking, she pushed it open to reveal two enemy soldiers crouched over a console. Before Kale could react, she grabbed his sidearm and fired, dropping them both with precise shots. She handed the weapon back without a word, her face unreadable. Kale stared at her, realizing she had moved faster than his reflexes could track. Squad regrouped at the extraction point, data core in hand. But before they could call for pickup, a distant explosion shook the ground. Enemy reinforcements were closing in fast. Kale ordered the team to fall back, covering their retreat with bursts of gunfire. Aris moved like a shadow, weaving between soldiers and rubble, guiding them down a path that avoided enemy traps. Several times she shouted directions that saved lives, her voice carrying an authority far beyond her age. By the time they reached the clearing for extraction, every soldier knew they would not have made it without her. On the flight back, the squad sat in silence again, but the mood was different. They stole glances at Aris, no longer with suspicion, but with something closer to admiration. Kale caught her watching the stars through the small window, her silver hair glowing faintly in the cabin lights. "You did well," he said quietly. She turned to him, her lips curving in the faintest smile. "I told you I would be stronger," she replied. There was no pride in her voice, only certainty. Kale felt a strange weight in his chest at her words, as if they carried more meaning than he understood. Back at the base, reports of her performance spread quickly. Some officers wanted to assign her to training units, while others still argued she was too dangerous to keep. Kale stood in front of the command table and made it clear if they wanted her gone, they would have to go through him. Colonel Vance studied him for a long moment, before finally nodding. "Then she stays," the colonel said. Aris, standing quietly nearby, didn't react outwardly, but Kale saw the way her fingers curled slightly at her sides, as if holding on to something she didn't want to lose. Weeks passed, and Aris trained alongside the soldiers every morning. She was faster than most, her movements sharp and precise, yet she still listened closely when Kale gave her instructions. The others began to treat her as part of the unit, though some still whispered about her alien heritage. Kale noticed how she ignored their doubts, focusing only on improving herself. Every sparring match, every obstacle course, she pushed harder, as if proving something only she understood. One evening, Kale found her alone in the training yard, practicing with a combat staff. The weapon spun in her hands with incredible speed, striking the practice targets with force that cracked the wood. She stopped when she saw him, brushing silver strands from her face. "You always watch from a distance," she said. Kale stepped closer, meeting her gaze. "I need to know you're ready for what's coming," he replied. Her expression softened for a moment, but then she turned back to the targets, striking them again with controlled precision. The next mission came. Without warning, a forward outpost had gone silent, and reconnaissance drones were destroyed before they could send back data. Kale's squad was ordered to investigate. As they prepared for departure, Aris stepped forward without hesitation. "I'm coming," she said. Kale glanced at Colonel Vance, who gave a short nod. No one argued this time. The transport lifted into the dark sky, engines humming steadily as they flew toward the unknown threat. The outpost was eerily quiet when they arrived. The gates stood open, and scorch marks lined the walls. Inside, equipment was overturned, and the air smelled faintly of smoke and burned circuits. The squad moved cautiously, weapons ready. Reese walked at Kale's side, scanning the shadows with an intensity that made him uneasy. They found no signs of life until a faint scraping sound echoed from the command building. Kale signaled the squad to fan out, and they advanced toward the noise. Inside the building, they found signs of a struggle. Tables were overturned, and deep claw marks scored the walls. In the center of the room, a large hole had been torn through the floor, leading into darkness below. Kale frowned, studying it carefully. Before anyone could stop her, Reese stepped to the edge and dropped down. Kale cursed and followed, landing hard in the lower level. The air was colder here, and the only light came from a dim emergency lamp. Flickering in the corner, they moved together through the underground passage. The sound of dripping water echoed faintly, but beneath it was something else, a steady rhythmic pulse. As they rounded a corner, the source of the sound came into view. A massive alien beast, armored in thick scales, crouched over the body of a soldier. It turned toward them with glowing red eyes and let out a low, rumbling growl. Kale raised his rifle, but before he could fire, Reese stepped forward, her staff unfolding with a metallic snap. She moved with speed that blurred her outline, striking the beast's head with a sharp crack. The creature roared and lashed out, its tail slamming into the wall with enough force to send debris flying. Kale fired bursts into its side, but the armor deflected most of the rounds. Reese leapt onto its back, driving her weapon between the plates of its neck. The beast thrashed violently, but she held on, twisting the staff until the creature collapsed. With a shudder, she jumped clear as it hit the ground, her breathing steady. Kale stared at her, realizing she had just saved the squad again, and perhaps all of them would be dead without her. When they returned to the surface, the soldiers regarded Reese with something close to awe. Even those who had doubted her now offered quiet nods of respect. Back at the base, Kale overheard younger recruits talking about her as if she were already a legend. That night, as they stood outside under the stars, Reese glanced at him with a small smile. "I told you I'd be ready when I came back," she said. For the first time, Kale allowed himself to smile back without hesitation. The days after the outpost mission felt different. Around the base, soldiers who once doubted Reese now greeted her with respect. She moved through the halls with quiet confidence, training harder each day. Kale noticed the change but also saw something else, a certain restlessness in her eyes. It was as if she was waiting for something, some moment that had yet to arrive. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the training yard in shades of gold and crimson, Reese approached Kale. She was without her staff, wearing only light armor, and her expression was unreadable. "You once told me to come back when I was ready," she said. Kale studied her for a moment before answering. "And are you ready now?" he asked. She stepped closer, her gaze steady. "I am," she replied, and there was no doubt in her voice. Before Kale could respond, the alarm sounded across the base. Red lights flashed, and the loudspeakers blared orders for immediate deployment. A massive enemy force had breached the perimeter in the north sector. Soldiers rushed to their positions as transport vehicles roared to life. Reese and Kale ran side by side toward the armory, grabbing their weapons and gear in silence. This was not a skirmish or patrol, it was a full-scale battle. The northern wall shook under heavy bombardment when they arrived. Alien siege beasts battered the gates while enemy troops swarmed in from all sides. Kale's squad formed a defensive line, firing at anything that moved toward the breach. Reese moved with precision, striking down enemies with her staff before they could close in. A massive explosion rocked the ground, sending soldiers to their knees. Through the smoke, a towering enemy commander appeared, armored in black steel and wielding a massive blade. Kale raised his rifle, but the enemy deflected his shots with unnatural speed. The commander advanced, cutting down 2 soldiers in a single swing. Aris didn't hesitate. She charged forward, her staff spinning in a blur. The two clashed, each strike ringing out like metal on metal. Sparks flew as they fought, neither giving ground. Kale moved to cover her, shooting down enemies who tried to interfere. The battle between Aris and the commander grew faster, the air trembling with every blow. Finally, Aris saw her chance. She feinted left, then drove her staff into a gap in the commander's armor. The alien roared in pain, swinging wildly, but she stayed close, striking again and again until the massive figure collapsed. The enemy line faltered at the sight, and Kale ordered a counterattack. The soldiers surged forward, driving the invaders back beyond the perimeter. The gates were secured, and the northern sector was safe once more. When the battle ended, the base was quiet except for the sound of the wounded being tended to. Aris stood with her staff resting against her shoulder, looking toward the horizon. Kale approached, his expression unreadable. "You saved us again," he said. She turned to face him, her silver eyes catching the light. "I told you I'd be ready when the time came," she replied. He nodded, knowing she had proven it beyond question. That night, the two of them stood outside the barracks, the stars bright above. Aris glanced at him with a faint smile. "When I first met you, I thought you saw me as just another outsider," she said. "But now, I think you see me for who I truly am." Kale looked at her for a long moment before answering. "I do," he said, and in that quiet moment, under the endless sky, they both understood that whatever battles lay ahead, they would face them together.